There seems to be an endless debate. Gibson versus Fender, Strat versus Les Paul. Which one's better, what they sound like, what music they're for. Today we're going to add to that noise with, is one more comfortable than the other, Cooper?
I think so.
I think so. Stay tuned. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name's Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, visit our Teespring store linked below for our custom designed t-shirts. So Cooper, you have gone on record on the channel as saying you are more of a Strat guy.
That is true, yes.
Guilty as charged, huh?
Oh yeah.
And I have gone on record of saying I like just about every single guitar that I can get my hands on. But I own a number of Strats, but I also own a Les Paul. And I was thinking the other day as I was playing my Les Paul, there's been so much debate about these two guitars specifically, or a Telecaster and a Les Paul, and Gibson versus Fender, and everyone seems to be kind of in their own camps, so to speak. And I do find, and this is why I wanted to talk about this, that in some cases, just from a comfort standpoint, I tend to gravitate to one versus the other. In other ways, I try to make one feel like the other. And they all have their own benefits. So first of all, let's kind of talk about, they are very different guitars.
Yeah, definitely.
They definitely sound different. So how would you describe the sound of a Strat versus a Les Paul?
I think the snappiness of a Strat, even on its most rhythm pickup, probably going to be a little more articulate sounding, just in clean tones for sure. But then the thickness of like a PAF style humbucker, kind of hard to beat, especially with the Les Paul that you're playing on. It's hard to beat that one. But I've always just associated the Stratocaster with that Fender like bright twang, really easy to cut through.
Chiminess, right?
Very chimey.
Yeah.
However, with the Les Paul, you get a little more girth, maybe, just natural right out of the box with these pickups. But I don't know. That's kind of where my mind goes on these two.
I mean, you can look at them and see the dramatic differences, and there's a cost difference. Now, there's a huge cost difference here because I'm holding one of the new American Professional 2 Stratocasters. And they're, under $2,000.
Yeah.
I think about $1,650-ish, or something like that. Check our website. But you are holding a custom shop Les Paul.
Yes, I picked this guitar when Chris proposed this video idea because this is just my favorite Gibson that we currently have. I think it really exemplifies the Les Paul in its truest form. But this is the 60th anniversary custom shop. 1960.
Yeah.
Just an absolutely gorgeous guitar. We did a review on this one before, but one of the best feeling and best sounding Les Pauls. So comparing the comfortable aspect, I do think this is as comfortable as it gets, maybe on a Les Paul.
It's interesting because comparing these two guitars, I had to reflect. We've been comparing these two guitars for over 50 years. I mean, the Les Paul came out in the early 50s. This came out in the mid-50s, and they're largely unchanged since. I mean, there have been tweaks. There are various models. We've done a review of the custom shop Access Les Paul, the Bengal Burst, the modern Les Paul, where they've done things with the radius of the fingerboard, compound radiuses, the neck carves, the heel. Same thing on the Fenders. The radius changes, the heels change, the pickups, the controls change, but largely, they're slight variations on the same theme. They haven't really changed since the intro. Since the beginning, the Strat has been an ash, then alder body with a bolt-on maple neck. Since the beginning, the Les Paul has been a mahogany body with a maple cap, with a glued-in mahogany neck. And, the two kind of styles are reminiscent of where they started. First guitar for Fender was the Telecaster. This is really a more ergonomically shaped version of the Telecaster with more appointments, more options, more sounds out of it. The Les Paul came out of Gibson, which was already building like the ES, the electric Spanish guitars, the archtop guitars, and you can see even in the carved maple top that influence being there. And what struck me, and this is kind of why I thought about this, is this past weekend I'm playing my Les Paul, and if I'm honest, it's not always the guitar that gets grabbed. It depends upon what I'm going to be playing. I look at a set list and everything and grab a guitar that works accordingly. But I love the sound of it. I do love the feel of it on the neck. I don't love the weight so much of it, but it's okay. I'm not a weakling. If your Les Paul's too heavy, go to the gym, man, and pump it up. But they are heavier guitars. I do love the feel, but the thing that hit me the most was the sustain.
Yeah.
Like, there's these moments where you can get sustain out of gain. Okay, think back to Carlos Santana, man. He was the king of doing that early on. Just crank up the amp, get in front of it, and get this kind of feedback going where you can have sustain from gain, where it's just keeping the note. But a Les Paul doesn't even need that.
Yeah.
Like on a clean tone, I could play a note and it would just ring. And for some reason this past weekend, I was more kind of acutely aware of that. That being said, I tend to be more comfortable overall, just generally speaking, with my Strat. And I have a number of reasons. I wanted, before I delve into those, however, to get your thoughts on the matter. You don't own a Les Paul currently, right?
Not currently. It left me because of the Jazzmaster that I've discussed, my in and out kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I currently have 3 Strats. So obviously my Olympic White is kind of my go-to. Something about that entire formula, the carve on the body, the contoured shape. I think minor thing, but a satin neck versus a gloss neck. It comes down to just personal preference, but that is more comfortable to me. And maybe a little bit has to do with the weight. It's funny because you noticed that one's maybe a little heavier.
Or I've been playing acoustics all day. So
also this one, when we reviewed this one, I noticed it was a little bit lighter than a typical just Les Paul standard 50s or 60s.
The custom shops tend to be, just for anyone out there. I'm not sure if they're torrefying or heat treating the woods or if they're sorting it for weight. I think they do sort for weight, but they do tend to be lighter than a normal Les Paul.
I think, so it's interesting that these two, maybe the weight is obscured a little bit. However, my Strat, it's very light. It's super easy. It feels like it kind of contours to me easier. The other thing that I want to get your opinion on is how playing each one might inform how hard you're picking, how hard you're playing, how fast you're playing, all that. Do you play differently, do you think, between them?
I think you do, and I think both how I play differently and the sound that I want tends to be where the determinator of which guitar I end up grabbing. There's also a thing where I like the control layout of a Strat a little bit better because I tend to use the volume knob a lot. I'll use it for swells, or I just modulate my volume. By the way, if you're playing and you've got an amp and you want to ever clean up, all you have to do is turn down the guitar and it'll clean up the sound of an overdriven amp. And so I do that a lot rather than kind of turning overdrive on and off or switching channels in the amp. I don't even own an overdrive pedal anymore. I just use the amp, and
you got a nice amp.
If I need clean, there's a channel specifically for that. But a lot of times I'm on the overdriven channel that has a lot of gain, and I'm just dialed back on the guitar. And you can do that with either of these guitars, but I tend to find the single volume versus the 2 volume controls a little easier. Now, there's other songs or other sets I might do where I like the setup on that, where I have the bridge pickup all the way up, the neck pickup dialed back just a little bit, and I can switch on the fly, to that, from that rhythm sound to that lead sound, and it jumps up and it increases the volume. But what it also does is it pushes the amp more. It gets a little bit more nastiness into it, a little bit more gristle on the note, as it smacks it, so to speak.
Totally.
So that's why there's pros and cons to both of them. I've always found the body of this, and to your point, the satin finish neck, more comfortable. That being said, I do have a gloss finish neck on the back of a Tele, and in some ways, a Tele's not that comfortable at all. It's just a slab of wood. You don't have this ergonomic curves that are associated with it, and I do find that even on that, I prefer a satin finish neck. But gloss is okay; it doesn't terribly bother me. There's some guys that complain about, like, by the end of a set, at the back of a glossy neck, particularly if it's nitro finished like a Gibson, it's like sticky.
Yeah, it gets kind of tacky. And
I think mileage may vary. I think that might have something to do with like your pH in your hand.
Yeah, wash your hands before a set.
Well, and some people just have, like, they sweat a lot, or they might react more. So, that might be what you're dealing with. So, but yeah, I tend to find that more comfortable. I tend to find this more comfortable. And I tend to find just kind of this overall shape a lot more comfortable to hold. You know where I like the Les Paul better, though? The scale length. It's a much shorter scale length than the Strat. And, I think famous players like Stevie Ray Vaughan did this for numerous reasons. One, he used ridiculously heavy gauge strings, but even people that used kind of a normal set of strings tended to tune down on a Strat to E flat because they wanted that kind of slinkier feel to the setup. That's what you get on a Les Paul. If the string gauges are the same on the sets between these two guitars, because that one is a shorter scale length, it feels better when you go to bend it. Also, generally speaking, if you're just talking about normal Strats, normal Les Pauls, that's a flatter radius. And so in a lot of ways, you can get the action lower and you can play a little faster. If you can play fast, I can't play fast, but theoretically I could play faster. And you could bend without choking it out because it's not as round as a Strat. The Strat's going to be more comfortable conceivably for chords. So if you're playing more rhythm stuff versus more lead stuff, I mean, there are kind of quotients like that from a feel and comfort standpoint.
Yeah. What do you think about this, again, this 1960 60th anniversary does have a little bit maybe thinner of a neck shape, but I do think, any standard or, American Pro, there's difference there. I picture Les Paul with just a chunkier neck,
Well, I think most standards, it's kind of weird because of what Gibson's done. So if you look at the original series and you look at their 50 standard or 60 standard, they are going to what was going on in that era. And the 50s necks tended to be thicker and the 60s necks tended to be thinner. Most, prior to that separation of the line, most of the standards had thinner 60s style necks. That's what most people just called it. It's a 60s style neck. It's thinner. And actually, for that series, Gibson did 3 different versions because as 1960 went on, it just kind of changed. The colors changed. The necks got even thinner.
I think this is the version 3.
I believe so.
I think this is the version 3. So it has the thinnest of all those, thinnest neck, like the lightest body. And
And I have a 59.
Yeah.
And I like the thick neck. I've got my Telecaster's got a thick neck. I actually like that quite a bit. I think it just feels good, particularly if you play kind of thumb over the top stuff. It fills out your hand. But a lot of times I guess I play with proper technique where I have my thumb on the back of the neck like you're supposed to. And so neck thickness doesn't bother me so much. I tend to feel the setup and the radius and the scale length more so than what the neck thickness is.
Yeah.
And so I have a hack. I don't know if I've told you about this, but I really like the feel of a Les Paul on the scale length. And I also have a PRS Santana, which has a shorter than normal scale length from PRS. It actually has a Les Paul scale length because Carlos Santana used to play Gibson SGs back in the day. And so I really like that kind of 24.5-inch scale length. So on my longer scale length guitars like a Strat or a Telecaster, I use 9.5 to 44 gauge strings.
NYXLs?
I use NYXLs. There's a number of string companies that make that. I don't know why Elixir doesn't, by the way. But I thought I had figured it out. I had cracked the code. I'm like, man, these feel like 10s on my Les Paul. And then you flip over the carton of strings and you read, oh, that's what it's for. So what I do is I like the comfort of this and I like the comfort of this, but I want this to be slinkier. And so I change strings to, in ways, make my Strat feel like my Les Paul.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like to use very thick string, like I'll use the NYXL 11s or something, but then tune down a whole step, go D standard or something, and it just kind of hits that perfect feeling for me, But quick question for you. Do both of these from the factory, just your standard Les Paul, standard Stratocaster, do they both come with 10s?
I think they come with 9s now, and it's varied over the years. All Strats used to come with 10s. Then they were 9 to 42s. The custom shops come with 10s. I think the standard stuff comes with like 9 to 46, which is a mixed set. So yeah, it varies and it keeps changing from year to year. So it's hard to tell. That's why we have specs on our website at alamomusic.com. So it varies. But so I think that to sum it up, I think the body shape of this Leo Fender made ergonomic on purpose. When the Les Paul first came out, it came out when the Tele did. And the Tele hasn't changed much, and the Les Paul hasn't changed much. But the Les Paul has kind of remained as like the flagship. Apologies to Tele lovers. I love my Tele, but I think we can say, arguably, the Stratocaster has become and remained the flagship in the Fender line, despite Leo's trying to supplant it with the Jazzmaster, and that didn't work, and the Jaguar, and that didn't work. The Strat has remained. It's just been resilient, and people continue to love the shape. I mean, think about how many S-style guitars. It's like there's a T-style and there's an S-style. They're that quintessential. And there's an LP style. I mean, how many companies are just trying to copy or do their take on these venerable guitar shapes? Because they have been so good for so long. Was it 70 years now?
Yeah,
since they first came out?
Yeah, doing the 70th anniversary.
It's
right?
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so, that they stand the test of time. People have bellies and rib cages, and they have arms, and so it works very well for that standpoint. And I think it's also spoken of the fact that these are such great guitars. An entire guitar company, PRS Guitars, came out about like, let's see if we can blend the best of both worlds here. And then Paul ended up coming up with something unique. But nevertheless, I do think in a lot of ways this is more comfortable. But in other ways, I really like some of the comfort aspects of that. And I think it just speaks to the uniqueness of both guitars. But if you had to choose one, it's going to put you on the spot. Okay? Which one would you choose? If you could have any Les Paul or any Stratocaster, would it be a Les Paul or Strat?
I think it's got to be a Strat for me, and that's purely based on the way that I play, the type of stuff that I play, and the tones that you kind of need for something like that. The 2 and 4 position of a Stratocaster, I think my sound kind of grew out of
that in-between tone,
with those tones. Not to say you can't get an incredible in-between or woman tone on this thing, but for me, let's just say when I was doing my one-to-one trade for a Jazzmaster, I didn't even consider getting rid of a Stratocaster, and it was Les Paul, gotta go. I would love to get another one down the road, but it's gonna be a Strat for me. What about you?
I think it depends, because I've thought about this. There's been times where I've looked at my collection and going, if I had to sell one, what would sell? And I'd probably, truthfully, stay with the Strat because they are so versatile. But there's kind of an addendum to that, and what that is to get to do the same things that I do by having multiple guitars right now. I'd have to have some way of kind of making up for the fact that I no longer have my Les Paul. If I never change the settings on my amp, and I don't use an overdrive pedal, like I said. So if I'm going to be, changing, I'm literally going to be changing the gain, because this just would never push the amp as much. It's not going to have the same sustain. It's just not going to get certain sounds that the Les Paul is capable of getting, and vice versa. And so, I think, if I had some of those things that I, could, to ensure that I could still cover some of my bases, I'd probably go with the Strat. But I am consistently amazed at how versatile a Les Paul is. I think so many people make the mistake of only like keeping all the knobs on 10 and only messing with the 3-way toggle. And the beauty of it really is in some of those in-between tones. Joe Bonamassa has done some great videos showing this, just going from a clean tone to an overdriven tone, or how much control and tone shaping ability you have with the tone pots. I mean, put a Les Paul on the bridge lead pickup, turn it all the way up, and roll the tone all the way off, and you get such a cool sound.
Yeah, and Gibson, I was watching a video the other day about Gibson's newest, everything in the original and modern collection. I forget the name, you might know it. but the pots being like a true,
The taper?
Yeah, true taper. If you want 7, you're getting actually 7 instead of
Instead of it just
0
disappearing.
to 10.
Yeah.
You know, which is cool, and it really
It's an
lends
audio
itself.
taper pot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are a huge improvement, I think.
Yeah, good. Gibson. PRS has been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
So, no, it's great. And, you know, the older stuff had that. I think my custom shop had that. It's nice to see that throughout their line. It really makes it usable. Fender's improved their pots over the years. But yeah, you know, don't be afraid on either of these guitars to explore the tone controls, to explore what sounds the guitar gets, and find where you're really comfortable at. Someone's going to comment below and say, no, the Les Paul is more comfortable. And then there's a lot of people saying, no, the Strat really is. It really, you know, your mileage may vary, but I think overall they definitely have their pros and cons. So, and they definitely sound different, and we're going to prove it to you right now. So Cooper's going to put them through his paces with some spank and gristle and show you exactly how different both of these guitars are. Check it out. Well, Cooper, great demo. And, you know, it's funny, as we talked about, this actually is a lighter Les Paul than that Strat. So if anyone's wanting a light Gibson Les Paul custom shop, give us a call. This guitar is nice and light. It feels like mine, but the neck's not as chunky. So yeah, lots of differences between these guitars. Definitely, they sound different. You know, there are reasons that some people outside of ergonomics will choose one over the other, and they're kind of funny reasons. Like, I know a guy who he actually has some Strats, but they all have humbuckers. And he tends to have Les Pauls because the way he plays, he always hits the middle pickup. And so he won't have a guitar with a middle pickup. And that drives me crazy because I love the middle pickup.
Yeah.
Like I look at guitars, I look at Les Paul sometimes and go, put a middle pickup in there.
Yeah.
Because that in-between sound is so awesome. And the volume, do you know about the volume issue? Mm-mm. So some people, like, I kind of like that on a Strat.
Yeah.
And a lot of PRS guitars and others, you know, the volume's right there. I can hit it with my pinky, okay? Other people, that's the problem. They hit it with their pinky. Do you ever do that when you're playing and you hit the volume on the Stratocaster?
I've hit the toggle before.
But not the volume.
No,
right?
I don't.
I don't know how you guys do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't have that problem, thankfully. But yeah, some people, they'll hit it, and so they'll be playing, and they hit the volume, and then it turns the guitar down. It's kind of like on, was it Johnny Marr on his Jaguar? He would hit the switch up top and suddenly go out of phase, you know?
Johnny Marr.
So yeah, maybe see to the technique. I don't know. Johnny Marr, your technique's wrong. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, there's little things. You know, we could talk big things about the neck and the body, but sometimes it's the little things that really make the difference about whether or not you're going to bond with the guitar. And that's why it's so important to have it in your hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully this video was helpful, because at the end of it, I don't think we helped you at all and didn't clarify anything, and you're back where you started. But if you actually get a chance to play these guitars, saying you don't own one, you'll probably very quickly adapt to what you like the best. I think that's why there's some guys that love tellies. I turn the control plate around on my Telecaster, you know, because that's kind of how I want it. And everyone, you know, kind of makes a guitar their own. But, you know, these are two of the most quintessential electric guitars. They have their different fans, and for very clear reasons. So hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, let us know below. Let us know if you own both of these, multiples, kind of where you've fallen and what you find that you like when it comes to picking out different electric guitars, whether it's a feels thing or it's the pickups and it's the sounds. You want that glassy, articulate chiminess of a single coil, or the girth, as Cooper put it, for a humbucker. At the end of the day, the very best guitar is the one that you are playing, whether it's a Strat, Les Paul, or something else. So keep playing it. If you're new to our channel, help us get to 100,000 subscribers by subscribing and by liking our videos, so that other like-minded guitar players on YouTube and other places will learn about it as well. So thanks so much for watching from Cooper and I. See you next time.